Hi, guys. Welcome back to our Non Toxic Podcast. I'm Hannah, and we are here for another solo episode. Unfortunately, today's is not going to be nearly as happy and plucky and lighthearted as I like our episodes to be. But it's on my heart, and I always try and be as honest and transparent and timely with what's going on in my life as I can be, just because if this is my platform and way to communicate with the 500 or so listeners that we have, then I want to continue to do that and try and be as authentic as possible in bad times, just like I am in good times. So with that being said, you'll have to forgive me if this episode is a little bit sad or emotional or a little scattered. I have my notes in front of me, which I usually try not to have such extensive notes and just go more organic, but just for the sake of collecting my thoughts, and staying on track, I thought this would be a good day to do that. So bear with me. Thank you in advance for listening. Thank you to everyone who already knows my circumstances and has been so much more than gracious, so kind to me, and has given me the encouragement and strength to put this out into the world. Hang on one second. So, over the past week, I have experienced some of the greatest happiness of my entire life, and additionally, the absolute most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, awful sadness that I have ever experienced. And I know that I've had a relatively blessed life. I've dealt with my mom having breast cancer. I've dealt with, obviously, struggles that seemed insurmountable at the time, but in the face of just the loss of this week, I'm just feeling gutted, to be honest with you. And I don't know how this is going to go. I've not talked about it that openly. This is very fresh, still very much happening. And I just think it's important to get my feelings out while they're here, while maybe the vulnerability and the ugly side can help someone. And I'm going to do my very best to communicate as well as I can. So once again, thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone in my life who has given me the strength to get to this point. So I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to share what I was going through because it is very personal to myself and my husband. But while I was going through all of this pain and suffering, for lack of a better word, this week, it was the stories from other women in my life who have gone through a similar experience, who were honest enough with me to share that really helped me to feel less alone, to feel less like something was wrong with me. And who am I to hide my experience, however brief and different it may be from others, if there's at least one person who can feel less alone because of it, because the community is what I would say single-handedly helped me get through just the awful emotions that this week brought. So I know I'm being cryptic and vague, so let me back up a little bit. I have been married for 2 years, and I went off of birth control whenever I got married. We didn't want to have kids right away. I just had been on it for a long time, and you hear horror stories about what it does to your body and your hormones and everything along those lines, and it was something that was important to me to get off of as soon as it was within the confines of a marriage, that I felt like, if something were to happen, if we were to get pregnant, I would still be very happy. So I went off of birth control a couple years ago, had awful side effects. That's a whole other topic that I'm not going to even attempt to breach today. But we didn't want kids yet, and we had wanted to wait and save money and do all of these things. And fast forward to October of this year, a little over a month ago, we had been approaching our 2-year anniversary. My husband's about to turn 30. I was about to turn 25. I've had my business for almost 3 years. We have accomplished almost all of our milestones financially, in our life, all of these things that we had wanted to do. It was just getting to a natural point. Conversations were starting to get more excited and more anticipatory, and everything that we had kind of before been preventing and wanting to maybe let's just wait a little bit longer, we were both kind of edging towards being ready and feeling more excited about the prospect of having kids. And my friends and I always joke about how I'm the least maternal one of my friend group, how I'm not the one that you ask to babysit. I didn't really babysit growing up. I'm not around kids, I don't have like that need to like pass me a baby. I need to breathe in this baby smell. That's just not ever been me. And for a long time, I was insecure about that because some of my friends are just so natural and so gifted with children to the point that they can just go, pick up a baby. They know exactly what to do. They have this instinct that seems to just take over. And I can joke about it, but that's always been a root of insecurity for me, is that I would be a bad mom somehow, or because it wasn't always a quote dream of mine to be a mother. Whenever I would list out the things that I wanted to do with my life, of course I wanted kids, but all of my goals and dreams were professional or, in the physical fitness realm or something along those lines. It was never just to be a mom. And when my friends would say that to me, it always made me feel less feminine somehow, or like less of a woman, because that just wasn't what was on my heart. And I knew I wanted a family and wanted kids, but it had just always felt like something unnatural to me. So the closer that we start to get in our marriage to wanting to have children, the more I start to change a little bit. And I feel like I'm longing for this thing in our lives, this change, and to have our family grow. And our house is starting to feel just a little bit empty with the two of us. And, the conversation shifted more from, one day, to the what ifs, and it's going to be so fun when we get to this milestone and so on. And, when you're just so in love with someone, you want to have that with them. So seeing my husband be so excited to have kids, honestly, is the best feeling in the world, to the point where back whenever I was traveling a lot this year, I didn't feel like I was in that place yet. So prior to September, October, I was in the thick of work. Anyone who has kept up with the podcast or my life at all has probably no doubt about just the chaos and the busy season that I had, where I was gone all the time. I was on flights. I was gone 2 to 3 weeks out of every month for 3 or 4 months. And it was amazing and fulfilling professionally. And I had so much fun, but I almost got to a point where at the beginning of that, I came home from one of my first trips and I was feeling so motivated and just on fire for my work. I was passionate and excited. And I came home and told my husband we had, had this plan. After we hit 2 years, we'll probably start trying in the 3rd year. And I was like, I don't think I can try next year. I'm still picking up steam. I have all this momentum. I am so excited about the possibilities, the doors that are opening for me. And I'm traveling now. This is the avenue I never even saw as a possibility for myself and my career. I don't want to be done with that. And then I felt so selfish telling my husband, who has always wanted to be a dad, has always been completely open about that with me since we first started dating, to tell him that I want to push it off even further. So that kind of compounded my internal struggle with, am I cold? Am I heartless? Am I not maternal? Is there something wrong with me for the inability to feel that yet, about like this pull towards motherhood? So I was wrestling with that, but it just didn't feel like the right time to me in my heart. And I had that conversation. I've been so blessed with a husband that is, lets me speak my mind and how I'm feeling and never really judges me for any of that. So we had a really transparent conversation. I knew he was disappointed. And I think something started to shift in me then, because I just couldn't get over what a blessing it is to have a man that is so here for me and for our marriage, that he wants nothing more than to have kids with me and have a family with me. And that alone, I will never take for granted. The gift of that, to have someone who is so invested and already loves our family so much that he centers every decision that he makes in his career and his life. Everything is for our family. And I would be lying if I said that I did the same thing. He is far more selfless than me, and everything that he does, even since I first met him, has been geared towards giving our kids and me, by, we're all the same family, giving us the best life possible. So I had a hard time with that, but it just didn't feel right. And then fast forward over the next couple months after that conversation, then the travel shifted. It was very quick. I was still having a great time. I still was so fortunate to get to have those experiences, but then I started to feel like I was just another person kind of out, which obviously I'm just another person, but I would look at Springfield, my hometown, and the whole ecosystem of people that I love, and I would be hundreds of miles away in a different city in a hotel room by myself doing a job that I could easily be replaced in doing. And it was like I was looking at a snow globe of life just continuing to go on, whether I was there or not. My friends kept doing their things, and people went to work, and my clients would go, like everything just continued on. And I just felt so replaceable, both at work and in my home and everything. And I hated that. And it started to shift to where now I'm out of my routine. I'm away from my husband. I'm having fewer and fewer fulfilling conversations because everything is kind of geared towards me performing and having enough energy and time to fulfill my contracted responsibilities, that there's nothing left for the meaningful things. I'm not writing, which is a passion of mine. I'm not drawing. I'm not working out as much. I'm not seeing my people. I'm not doing any of these things that bring me joy and fill up my actual soul. It might fill my bank account, which is fantastic, but it's just, I was feeling so empty. So getting to the end of that season of my life, whenever all my contracts had kind of come to a natural end, and in deciding to take a little bit of a step back from the level of work that I was doing, it was almost this pull towards wanting to be irreplaceable in the way that matters. And that's with family. So there's no one that can replace me in my home. There's no one that can replace a mom in the lives of her kids. And I just felt like everything I had been doing up to that point had been insignificant, to the point where I was like, I don't think that I care about what I'm doing professionally anymore. And I say that very loosely because I am so fortunate to have an amazing job and I do have passion for it. But in the way that before it had been the sun in my life, in an almost unhealthy way, in everything that I had done for my career, that was my baby. And that was everything that I poured my energy, my time, and my passion into. All of a sudden I was like, for what? Someone could come in and offer a better price and that would be it. I don't want to discredit my loyal clients because that's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm replaceable at work. Anyone can do the job that I've been doing, but no one can replace me in the lives of the people that I care about. So that's when my narrative started to shift back to what I was telling you. So we had been talking about it and like our excitement had been building and we just decided, let's just stop taking precautions. And I'm not going to spell it out for anybody because this is a family-friendly podcast for the most part. And we've all taken a health class, so I'm just not going to get into all of that. But we just had decided, like, we'll see what happens. You never know. It could take a long time. It might not. We'll just kind of leave it in God's hands. So end of October, we just fully leave it up to chance. And I didn't really think much about it because I figured, they say it takes up to a year. And I was on birth control for a long time. And even though I've been off it, you just don't really know. So there's always that thing in the back of your head that's like, well, I've been off birth control for a couple of years. And even though we've been cautious, like 2 years with no slip ups is enough to give you a little bit of anxiety. So I just didn't know what to expect. I went on with my life. I've been running pretty heavily. I turned 25. I did my whole 25 miles the week I turned 25, little goal. I had a birthday party. I was drinking at my birthday party, all of these things. And then following that, my period was late. So I gave it a day or two. And of course I thought, I'm not on the dot regular. I can vary a couple days. I've been running a ton more. I'm sure that has an effect on it. And another day passed, and I just had a feeling. And I felt like that heaviness that you feel whenever you're PMSing. I'm like, this could go either way. I'm not going to get my hopes up. So I didn't. And then on the 4th or 5th day, I was like, I'm just going to take a test and just see, because I don't know about any other women, but I always have a stash of tests just in my house because you just get in your head. And I'm like, it's nice to have them on hand so that whenever you're nervous, whether you're hopeful or you're anxious, it's nice to just have them and not have to go into a CVS and have that awkward interaction. So I went to my stash, I got a test, and I took it as soon as my husband went to work because I just wanted to do it in my time and, have a second to decide if I wanted to surprise him, or all of those things go through your head. So I took the test and it was positive, and the line was faint. It was there, but it wasn't super prominent. So I thought my ears were going to start leaking brains. I did not know what to think, what to feel. I was so excited, but I had this governor on my excitement because it's not as prominent as I feel like it should be. And the control line is dark and this line is there. It's visible, but it's not as dark. So I started freaking out. I tried to call Bree, actually. She was at a Thanksgiving in, she was with her in-laws. I forget where Alex's family is from, but needless to say, she was not there. So I waited, and I made it a whole 10 minutes before I started freaking out again. So I drove to my doctor's office because I go to a family clinic in Nixa with doctors that are pretty aware of, who we are, and we have a relationship with them. So I drove there with my half pregnancy test, and I was going to just shove it in their faces and say, please explain this to me. Am I able to be excited yet? They're closed on Wednesdays, which I forgot. And the next day was Thanksgiving, and the next day was was Black Friday and they were closed for the next 3 days. So, like any sane person, I drove to a CVS and I bought a pack of digital tests because I'm like, well, these can't really half say pregnant. They have this, it's either pregnant or you're not. So I went and got another pack of those, took them to Schlotsky's Deli where I was supposed to be meeting a friend for lunch, and I took a test in the Schlotsky's bathroom by myself. And clear as day, on that little window, it said pregnant. And I have never felt like this universe of happiness explode in me as I did right then. And I think I was in the bathroom for probably 15 minutes by myself. I don't even want to know what they thought was happening, but I had no thoughts except for just like fireworks in my head, in my soul. So it was the best moment of my life, and it was in a Schlotsky's bathroom. So in the future, I will not be putting myself in a situation to have the best moment of my life in a Schlotsky's bathroom. So the whole rest of the day, I didn't want anyone to know except for Austin first. He deserves to be first. So I hid it in my bag, my purse. I walked around all day and did all of my errands and everything with a positive pregnancy test in my bag. I was shaking just about as bad as I am right now the whole day. And I couldn't think of anything. I think I had probably a 10-second lag on every conversation that I had, everyone that I was talking to, because I just couldn't think straight. It was the only thing in my head. It just kept going, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. And in that like millisecond where the test turned positive, it's like everything in my life just turned to gray. Everything except for what was happening. So I start thinking, of course, 9 months into the future, I start thinking, when can we tell our families? What is next January going to be like when we're going on family vacation? What is my business going to do? I have 10 million thoughts in that first day. And I was waiting until Austin got home to tell him. I told him when he came home from work that day, and I was so excited and nervous. I thought I was going to throw up in the best way. And he was so excited, but he's not like an outward reactor. He's not the kind that gives a reaction that you can like put on TikTok and have it go viral because of how cute it is. He's very stoic, and he was so happy. I think that he hugged me for like 10 straight minutes before we even moved. It was so happy. And we had a family Thanksgiving that night. We had a family Thanksgiving the next day, and we just decided to keep it to ourselves for the time being because it was so new and so precious, and it just felt like a dream. And we just almost didn't want to crack that bubble of pure happiness that only the two of us got to know about. And also, no one really gives you a book for those first few weeks or days, even hours, where you find out and you're like, I felt so lost and confused. I'm like, so do I call a doctor now? I can't because they're closed. Can we tell people? I know we can't tell the world, but do we tell our friends and family? Did I want to surprise them? Do I want to get like a cute gift? Or do I just tell them? Or I can't give them a picture because I don't have one. So you have a million thoughts, and there's just no guidebook about like those initial moments when you find out. And I just felt I felt like I was just walking around like completely lost, but so happy. So we kept it to ourselves. It was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do. We made it all the way through Thanksgiving. I know I was just staring off into space the whole day because my brain was not there. I could not think about anything else except for this baby. And I know that Austin felt the same way. And it's just like a struggle to keep one foot grounded in reality when your whole world is about to become infinitely better. So we decided that night on our drive home from one of his Thanksgivings, we're like, we should just tell our parents because it's Thanksgiving. Everyone's home. My brother's in from South Carolina. Everyone's together. We're taking family photos with his family the next day, and we figured it would be the perfect chance. So we just said, you know what? Regardless of what happens, we would want them to know. But at that point, the possibility of a bad outcome was not even in my brain. It was so far off of my radar. I had barely even grasped the fact that it was real to being able to understand consequences and risks and all of that. I, at this point, had taken 5 pregnancy tests. They were all positive. I was just so in disbelief and so happy. I'm like, there's no way it happened this quickly. There's no way that we are this lucky. And I remember feeling like, I can't believe this. How is life so good? How am I so blessed when I have so many friends that have struggled with infertility or have had challenges? And how is this happening for us in the first try with the first baby? I just remember being completely over the moon. Like I was in utter bliss. So we told my family. They were so excited, so beautifully, so happy for us. We told my grandparents because they are very close to me. And then the next day we told Austin's family because we had family Thanksgiving. We told them during family photos and got just the most beautiful reactions on camera from all of our families. Then the next day I had a little Friendsgiving with my 4 closest friends. And again, my whole logic was, I mean, I would tell them either way. If something happened, I would want them to know, so this is safe. So I told them, and I have all the reactions on film, and it was the most like beautiful, heartwarming, precious thing to me. I watched them like 1,000 times. And then I got home and I showed the reaction to Austin on Saturday after our Friendsgiving, and we have just been like faces hurting from smiling so much, like talking about names and what are we going to do? We can't put the Christmas decorations back in the front bedroom because now it has to be a nursery. Like, we had talked about everything. Where are we going to go for a little baby moon? What names do we like? We have to revisit our list, everything. And it was just beautiful. Like it's like talking about a dream, but it's real and we get to live it together. But on Sunday, I woke up and went to the bathroom before I got ready for church. And when I wiped, there was blood. And my heart, I think, dropped 1,000 stories. And I remember talking myself through it. And I was like, spotting is normal. This is very early. A lot of people have spotting. This is not unusual because it was very light. And I called to Austin and I showed it to him because I thought I was going to throw up, not in a morning sickness way. And he went pale and he was like, it's okay. It's okay. This is fine. We'll call our doctor and we'll just see. So we got ready for church. We texted our doctor and he called us in a few minutes and he said, I'm just going to shoot you straight. It could be nothing. Hello again. So sorry for the interruption. My SD card ran out of memory and I had a small heart attack whenever I looked down and saw that soundboard was not recording. But for some amazing stroke of luck, I looked down apparently right as it stopped recording because I had the first 20 minutes of audio and then I noticed. So I had to do a little Freddie Benson workaround and now we are recording audio via this line into my computer. So I think maybe God and all of my guardian angels knew that I was going to get emotional and now I had a moment to collect myself. So let me continue. So we had called our doctor. He was very straightforward with us and just said, it could be nothing. A lot of times bleeding in the first pregnancy or first trimester of your pregnancy is not uncommon. It can be nothing. It can just be, a result of any number of harmless things. But I don't want to give you a sense of false confidence and peace of mind and say that it's 100% nothing because until we look, we won't know. And it's also very common for women in their first pregnancy to miscarry. So, of course, immediately, as soon as he says that word, I start to break down. I've got just tears streaming down my face on the drive to church. And Austin looked at me and he's like, do you want me to turn around? And I just told him yes. So we went home and it was a crapshoot because if I would have gone to church, I wouldn't have heard a word that the pastor said. I wouldn't have heard a word that anyone said to me. I would have been a wreck. I had already cried through my makeup just out of worry. Like my heart breaks for the number of women who understand that feeling firsthand. But if not, you can imagine the panic and devastation and anxiety and nausea and fear and anger and everything that goes through your mind the second that you see blood on that piece of toilet paper. So I could have gone to church and distracted myself, but there was nothing that could have taken my mind off of everything that I was worrying for in that moment. So we went back home and I think I sat just like this the whole day, staring at the wall with tears streaming down my face because Austin tried his best to comfort me and say, we won't know. We're going to go to the doctor first thing tomorrow. We're going to check everything. They had said they would do blood work. They would do whatever they had to do. And in my heart, I think I just knew what was happening because the cramps were getting worse. It was beyond period cramps. It was beyond a stomach ache. It was beyond any of that. It was like deep, sharp, make you want to squeeze your eyes shut and count to 10 painful cramps. And every time I would go to the bathroom, the bleeding would get worse. And for the first couple times, Austin would come to check on me because I think that he was afraid for me to be by myself with how emotional I was. And then I had to tell him to stop coming in because it's just a sight that you want to shield anyone from, and especially my husband, who I love more than anything. So the whole day, all I could do was sit and wait and bleed. And it was torture. It was like nothing I would wish on anybody. And there's nothing you can do. That was the longest day of my life, to just sit and have nothing. I didn't want to take anything because I didn't know what I could take. And I also was afraid at that point that anything I did would make it worse. I was afraid to move. I had this like weird illusion that if I just stayed still and didn't move, then maybe somehow it would stop. Like my body would realize there was a mistake and I would stop bleeding and everything would be okay. And it would all have just been a scare. So I just didn't move the whole day. I just sat there. And even if I didn't have that weird unconscious thought, I don't think that I could have moved. There was nothing that I could do. I just sat and I tried to read. I couldn't. I tried to, get on my phone. But then every time I looked at my phone, it was texts from my grandparents, from my best friends saying, I'm so happy for you. I can't wait to see you become a mom. I'm over the moon. Like, I'm praying for you. All of these beautiful, sweet, happy sentiments. But it felt like just a knife was twisting in my gut whenever they would come in. So, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything because I didn't know anything. So I didn't want to tell anyone. I told my mom, and my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law knew because I wasn't at church. And even the texts that are like, I'm praying for you, God's got this, it feels like a slap in the face. And I have stronger faith because of my mom's breast cancer, but I also am painfully aware of how bad things can still happen in spite of your faith. And whenever people say, God's got this, he'll take care of you, he's got his hand on you and on your baby, and everything's going to be okay, I am so keenly aware of the fact that everything's going to be okay does not mean it's going to be okay in the way that I want it to be okay. It does not mean that my pregnancy will survive this. It does not mean that I will be okay for a day or a week or a month or several years, because I've been there. I've had people pray for my mom's mammogram and her biopsy results and say, everything's going to be okay. God's got this. He's got his hand on you. And you know what? Everything has been okay. My mom is still with us. We've had 11 amazing years of remission. She is healthy, but we had a hell of a time getting through that period of our lives. And it was ugly and it was painful and it was heartbreaking and it was hard and it was sobering and it forced me to grow up faster than I wanted to. And it wasn't fair. And all of those things are still true in the face of God having us, So it's just, as much as those words are true and they're comforting to a point, they're also not, because even though God's got me, it does not mean that I'm just going to float on a cloud away from the situation. So I couldn't be on my phone, which meant I couldn't distract myself, which meant I just stared at the wall and just felt it happening. And I do not want to be triggering in any way for anyone who's gone through this, but it's just the most awful, gut-wrenching feeling to just sit and feel your physiological pain and know exactly what's happening. To know that there's a life that you were supposed to carry, that you were so excited for and so excited to meet, that is now bleeding out of your body. And those were the kind of awful, just grotesque thoughts that kept running through my head the whole day. And I couldn't escape them and I couldn't verbalize them, because why would I subject my husband to that? If he doesn't have to feel it and he doesn't have to be keenly aware every second of what's happening, he's already devastated. Why am I going to make it even worse for him? So my mom came over and sat with me, and I think I just told her, I know what's happening. Like, I cannot convince myself otherwise. The things that I'm seeing, the things that there's no other outcome. I cannot see how a pregnancy can survive this. And for me, I think it ended on Sunday, because that was whenever I lost that little bit of hope. And then all night, I didn't sleep. I just agonized. It was like just 20 straight hours from the morning all the way until the next morning, 24 hours, I suppose, to when we went to the doctor, of just agonizing over what was happening. And we went to the doctor, and of course you see it in everyone's eyes, because everyone knows the odds and the statistics. And I couldn't even speak. We had my blood drawn. We talked through everything. We got the results back, and my HCG was too low for where it should have been at 5.5 weeks. And they confirmed that I was miscarrying. And I couldn't speak, I don't think, for an hour afterwards. I couldn't even cry. I just had tears streaming down my face. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't process it. And the whiplash that I felt in that 1 week, from going to the highest point of happiness and joy to then the lowest point of being so devastated and so sad and so angry and so unsure and so guilty. I just couldn't process it. And I remembered that one of my close friends had been pretty open about a miscarriage that she had before she had her first. And I texted her, and within seconds, she replied and said, "My meeting just got canceled. Can I come over?" And she came over and just cried with me. And I will never forget the fact that she showed up the second that I felt like my world was falling apart. And then my mother-in-law came, and my mom came, and then my dad came. And it was just like the door was open all day to the ones that knew. And it was like a blur. It's like I sat there and the world just spun around me. And it was just me kind of comatose. And I know it sounds like I'm being a little radical with my descriptions, but in that moment, that's how it felt. And that's still how it feels. I just got my voice back. And it feels like when I found out I was pregnant, it's like I said, everything in my life was just desaturated. Everything lost its color except for this baby. And all I could see was this future and becoming a mom and the life that I was going to have with them, and imagining, are they going to get my eyes or Austin's eyes? And what are we going to do with their room? And I wonder what kind of person they're going to be. And the second that I won't speak for anyone else, the second that I saw that positive test, it's like that feeling, that being inside of me became completely personified. They were a person. I could like talk to them, even though it's 10,000 leagues under the sea and there's no way that they've even developed ears yet. But in my head, I can communicate with them because they're growing in me and this is my child. And all of that was so real and so visceral. And then all of a sudden, it's like my life shifted to make room for this new sun, this new center of my universe. And then just like that, the sun went out. And I'm just left with darkness and this gaping hole in my life of where all of that should have been. And then I'm looking around and I'm trying to see what I thought was important before and what used to entertain me and make me laugh. And I have nothing. It's all in the dark. It's like everything is shaded and I don't care about anything. I don't care about my work. I don't care about the books that I was reading. I don't care about the shows I was watching. I don't care about I don't care about anything. I cared about becoming a mother to that baby, and that baby is gone. And that's something that I just have not been able to compute or to process. And I still don't really even have the words. It's less than a week later, and I know it's so new and so fresh to even be talking about right now. But I think that while these emotions are at their most devastating, that's what I wanted to be able to communicate, because there's nothing that can help in this state. There is no amount of platitudes or Bible verses or hugs or anything that can take away the feeling of a loss like this. And I also want to say that I know that my situation is far better than so many moms out there. And the fact that I only had a week to get excited and to plan and to get attached is a mercy in a way, because I know that so many women lose their pregnancies way further into them. I know that there are mothers who have lost children that they've lived with for years, and I cannot even imagine how that must feel. So I never want to come across like I'm sensationalizing my experience or trying to make it seem like it's the worst that there has ever been. It's the worst that has happened to me. And that's all that I can speak to. And just know that I have the utmost sympathy, and my heart is just broken for women who have experienced anything similar to this, worse than this, earlier than mine, later than mine, any of that. I feel you. And in the way that I am able to comprehend that pain, my heart goes out to you. But just know that this is my experience and my feelings, and I don't want to sound like I am making light or making my situation seem worse than anyone else's. So with that being said, I felt like there was an unfairness in a way to my friends and those around me because I felt devastated for the first day and devastated for the second day. And then I just felt angry. And that's such a hard thing to wrestle with, especially for me having faith, because I shouldn't be angry at God because that's not right, right? I didn't think I was allowed to be angry at God, but I was. And I had prayed. I had pages and pages of prayers from the second that I found out I was pregnant to when I started bleeding, begging for that not to be what was happening. And then I had nothing to write. I found myself sitting with a pen and I had nothing to say to God. And that's a scary place to be in. And I just had to sit in my own dark, cavernous brain and think through where to even begin to dig myself out. And if people tried to talk to me about it, I would get angry because how dare you try and talk to me about my world that's falling apart right now? But then if someone tried to talk to me about anything besides what was happening, I felt like, how dare you ignore that my world is falling apart right now? There's no way, it's not fair. There's no way for them to win. There's no way for anyone to have the right words that were going to bring me any kind of peace in that moment. So I just isolated myself, and I'm so fortunate to have the circle that I have that showed up anyways. And even if they didn't come into my house, the ones that sent texts and dropped things off and called and left messages and everything that they did, I have never felt more loved in my life. And I will never forget how people made me feel so seen and not forgotten and not alone. I will never forget that. But there's nothing that anyone can say to take away the feeling of shock and confusion and shame and guilt that come with this territory. And I know a few of the things that helped were my friends and women who have gone through this reassuring me that it wasn't my fault, that there's nothing I could have done differently, because all I could think about were the fact that I was drinking 2 weeks before I found out, and I had run 45 miles in the 2 weeks leading up to this miscarriage, and somehow it has to be my fault. I had to have done something wrong. I took the wrong medicine. I didn't find out fast enough. I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. And that's all I kept ruminating on, was the fact that I caused this. I failed. I have one biological job and I failed. And it wasn't until I started hearing about everyone else's experience, about women that I love and respect and admire and have been there for me, sharing their experiences, whether I knew about them or not, that it changed my thinking, because I would never, ever dream of looking another woman in the eyes and saying, you caused this. This is your fault. You failed. You're a bad woman. You did something wrong. You don't deserve to have a baby. I would never say that. I would never feel that. That would not be my instinct or my opinion at all. So why am I looking at myself and saying all of those things? Why am I being so harsh and cruel to myself in the face of this situation that statistics and science and medicine all say is out of my hands? So if it weren't for everyone who is so kind and opened up their heart to me to share their darkest times, I think that I would still be searching for any ray of sunshine. And that is why I wanted to share what I'm going through. So I have to go back to my notes because I'm getting a little bit lost. But I felt like I was guilty in being silly, and I felt like I didn't deserve to be sad because I knew for a week. I knew for less than a week. And that goes right back to what I was saying, is I would never qualify anyone else's grief based on the amount of time that they knew. And I saw this quote whenever I was, of course, doing the worst thing you can do in Googling and all of those things that you should never do. But there was an article from someone recounting their experience, and she said that she recalled well-meaning people attempting to comfort her by saying things like, at least you found out early, or how long did you know you were pregnant? And her response was, you often wonder if they're asking as a means to gauge if your emotional response is proportionate to the length of your experience. But it's not that simple. Something that's part of you for any amount of time can be profoundly impactful in ways we struggle to quantify. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like, and no one made me feel this way except for myself. No one had any kind of implication that I was overreacting or anything. But especially as the days started to go by and I still wasn't even able to talk about it or comprehend it or process it, I started to feel like, am I overreacting? Am I being silly? It felt like I had dreamt up the entire thing because I had gone from just the happiest I had ever been in my life to now wondering what the point of anything was. And I'm like, am I overreacting? Am I not coping with this well? Because I knew for less than a week. How has my life been ripped away from me in a week? Because if I didn't know and I wasn't pregnant and this didn't happen, I would have felt the same. I wouldn't have felt the loss if I didn't know. And if I took 6 months to get pregnant, I don't think that I would have felt any worse. But the fact that it happened and then it was gone has, I think, changed the chemical makeup of who I am. I do not feel like the same person. I don't feel like I think of the world the same way. I don't think of motherhood the same way. It's like I want to go back, but I can't. And I want to rewind time, and I can't. And there's this constant back and forth of you're overreacting. You need to get over it. It's so minor on the scale of what has happened to women around the world that you need to suck it up and move on. You're still healthy. You can try again. And then there's the other half of me that is screaming that there was a life that was lost. And how dare I think of anything else? Because that was a person and that was part of me. And to think about something as simple as recording a podcast episode, what is wrong with me? How can I think about anything besides that? So it's like I don't even know what train of thought I should be on. And I don't know if there's a right one, but I feel paralyzed by the war inside of me because on the one hand, I feel very justified. And I would tell anyone in my shoes to take as much time as you need. And you don't owe your recovery or your bounce back to your former self to anyone. But then to me, I'm like, really? You're going to sit in this and you're not going to realize how good life still is? And I think both things are true because this whole experience has been awful, hellish, just sadistic. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But I have seen sides of people and friendships that I never would have seen if I hadn't been at the lowest point in my life. And I think that in itself is a message from God, a message from the universe, and a message from everything in my life that there's so much good and there's so much love around me. And it's like I was angry at God and I was yelling at him in my head and in my prayers and in my journal and everything. And I was like, why did you let this happen? Why couldn't I have just not been pregnant? Why couldn't it have just been another month and I could have just gotten my period and we could have moved on? Why did I have to experience this? Because now I feel like I had all of my firsts ripped away from me. And I want to also preface and say I know that there are so many irrational things that I'm about to say, but this is the reality of what's happening in me. And please don't ever take this as my opinion of anyone else. This is just the way that your brain goes down dark paths when dark things happen. But I feel like I wasted everyone's time and joy. Everyone that I told, my friends, my family, my in-laws, my closest people, I feel like I wasted their time. Why did I tell them? Why did I get their hopes up? Why didn't I know if this is happening in me, if this is my baby? Why didn't I have some kind of maternal instinct that told me what was wrong? Why didn't I know something was wrong? Why did I ruin the first chance of telling everyone I love that we're having a baby? That is something that I will never get back. And I think that's one of the things that is breaking my heart along with the rest of it is that I can't even look at those videos anymore. They were some of the happiest, most heartfelt, exciting moments of my life. And I don't know if I can ever watch them again because it's a reminder of the pain that followed and the hopes in the life that I will never get to see play out. So it's too painful. And the next time I know that I will be just wrought with anxiety. And I know that everyone that loves me will always have this looming over any pregnancies that I have. even if it's common, even if it's 25% of first pregnancies, even if it's 1 in 4 women, this is always going to hang over me. And it will taint the next pregnancy because I will always remember this one. I will never forget what our first experience was. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I was angry, is because it just doesn't feel fair. And I know there are so many worse experiences. I know that, and I feel that, and I never want to seem like I'm taking away from the women who have had it, who would have taken this situation in a heartbeat over what they had to experience. Please understand that. But I'm still angry. And I'm still angry that I couldn't have had this beautiful, idyllic first pregnancy. And in a way, I'm angry at the women who could. And then I'm angry at myself because at least I got pregnant. And like I said, it's this constant battle that is just raging in me that I don't at all have the energy to fight. So where does that leave me? And I feel like I was crying out to God and yelling and kicking and screaming and pleading and everything. And I was asking him, where are you? Why is this happening? And it's like his response came to me in the form of this worship song, which I don't really listen to worship music for some reason. It's not, I think I conditioned myself not to like it because I listened to so much of it when my mom had breast cancer that it now reminds me of a bad time in my life. So I need to branch out and find new music that does not have connotations like that. But I just don't listen to worship music. So the fact that that came into my head, it was like a clear answer. And it was the song A Rescue by Lauren Daigle. And in the song, excuse me, one moment, I'm going to get through this. In the song, God says, I will send out an army to rescue you. And it's like, all of a sudden I could see the army that he sent out was there the whole time. And it was the people that showed up, whether it was via text or phone call or showed up at my door or anything. They were the army that God sent out. And I will never take that for granted. And my heart breaks for every person that had an experience that allowed them to be there for me so perfectly. And my heart breaks for everyone who didn't have that experience with the community that I have. And every woman who will never, ever get to feel the amount of love that I felt whenever I was at my lowest. And I'm just so grateful. And all of that is the reason that I want to be so embarrassingly vulnerable right now and share what has happened and how I'm feeling. I don't have any answers. I had my second round of blood work yesterday, and from here, my process has been to measure my HCG levels on Monday, and then again, I got the blood work done yesterday, and then I will find out if they're low enough for me to officially be cleared. Or if they're not, then I have to go back in 2 more weeks. And from there, it's just emotional. And I don't know what that looks like for me because even the whole year has been thinking that I was nowhere close to ready, to thinking that I am more than ready, to thinking that it's happening and that my world was about to change, to then my world changing in the absolute worst way. And I don't know where to go right now, to be completely honest. I don't know when I'm going to stop feeling guilty for being distracted from it, or stop feeling guilty whenever I don't think about it for a second and then laugh and start to feel like myself. I don't know when I'm going to stop thinking about everything that could have been and the person that this world will never meet and all the other people that will never get to be a part of this world. But I'm going to take it one day at a time. And I promised myself that I will never take for granted everything else that I have. The community that I have, the husband that I have, the health that I have otherwise, the fact that this is a blessing to even be sad about. The fact that I got to experience that joy for even 5 days. Some people will never know that. And I think simultaneously looking at my blessings while also giving myself time to grieve is the line that I'm going to try my very best to walk. I don't have a timeline. I don't have answers. I don't know when I want to try again. I don't know if I can think about that yet. And then there's this awful guilt of I don't want to try again because it feels like a replacement, or it feels like a band-aid, or it feels like a rebound, or it feels like somehow negating the life that almost was part of us and is part of us. So I don't know how I feel about going forward, and I don't know how I can have happiness without always having guilt that someone won't ever get to feel that. I hope that makes sense. I had a friend who had the most beautiful sentiment that said, joy and grief will coexist in you. And I think that that's the hope that I have, is that I don't think I want the grief to go away. I think that if I can quote a Marvel movie in the most inopportune time, that grief is just love persevering. And if I ever stop feeling this grief, it means that I'm forgetting. And I don't want to forget. As painful as it is, if these memories are the only things that I get to have of the first time I was pregnant and the first child that I will never get to meet, then I don't want to forget. And I don't want to forget the pain, and I don't want this ache in my heart to ever fully go away. And I also don't want to do a disservice to any future children that I have, and to my husband, and to everyone, by letting this take away all the good parts of my life and all the good parts of me and the happiness. And I want to get to be goofy and happy and lighthearted and not feel like I'm just tethered down. But I don't know when that's going to be, and I'm not going to make any promises. And the one thing that I can guarantee is that anyone who needs to talk, anyone who has had this experience, anyone who ever will have this experience, I will always have time for you, and I will always talk to you, and always be willing to share my experience and sit with you in anything. This has made me so devastated that it's so common, and that so many women walk around with this shadow that no one will ever know or see. And I don't know if it's taboo. I don't know if it's something that we talk about. I don't know if it's, I never thought that this would happen to me, so I never had a chance to think about how I would handle it. And the one thing I just keep coming back to is that I'm not alone. It's not my fault. It can't be, because all of these women have opened their hearts to me. So with all of that being said, this is the jumbled up, hard, difficult, sad, gut-wrenching, nauseating truth of this past week in my life. And I hope that I have done some justice to everything that I've been feeling. I don't know if it's the most eloquent or linear way of telling you, but I just wanted to get it out there and let everyone who has gone through it know that your story can help, and anyone who will go through it in the future know that you will be okay, and maybe not for a while, and that's okay. And the burden that we have of bearing and losing life is one that no one can understand unless you've been through it. And I feel this irrational sense of brokenness, like I'm defective, like I'm no longer pre-pregnancy, pre-motherhood me, because something in me shifted and I was pregnant, and I don't have anything to show. I don't have the glow. I don't have the baby. I don't have this majestic, new, beautiful stage of my life to enter into. I feel like I fell short. It's like I was jumping from one cliff to the next cliff, and they were both good stages of my life, and somehow I missed and I fell right down the middle, and now I'm just sitting at the bottom of this pit, and I don't know how I'm going to climb out of it, but I know that I will. And I know that I have a lot of people to help pull me up. So please know that I'm available, even in my own grief, to talk to anyone who needs it. And I don't want anyone to have to experience this alone. And I am going to do my very best to find all the good things in life and remember how blessed I am, so that when I do have the absolute privilege of bringing a life into this world, that I am so overwhelmed with happiness and joy and life and color and passions that I can show the best parts of the world to them. And anything short of that is a disservice to a child that I would be so fortunate to get to have one day. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me struggle through all of my sentences, my sentiments, and my feelings and my grief. And if you see me and I'm doing okay, then don't ask about it. I'm just kidding. I want to be a resource, and I want this pain to have a purpose. And the purpose will be if I get to help someone through any kind of grief of their own. So at any point, stop me, message me, talk to me, whatever I can do. Let me pray for you. Let me cry with you. We will get through all of this together. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.